Cabinet Prime Minister, good morning. And Cabinet Secretary, these refugees ended up in Ethiopia because of the fight that was taking place between the Borana, Rendile, and the Gabra. And sadly, Mr. Speaker, our colleagues, Honorable Abdi Sasura, Honorable Dr. Bonaya Kodana, Honorable Dr. Kuraja Kalkalo, and former Assistant Minister, MP for Nakuru, Honorable Miruki Kariuki, lost their life when they were going to address this thing as these people ran out of the country. So it is something that evokes bad feelings in the leadership of this country. I therefore, Mr. Speaker, fail to understand that over 4,000 Kenyans have requested that they go back home. Because the challenge, you said yourself, that the refugees must be willing. They have even indicated to you the areas they want to go to, and they have told you that we want to go to areas inhabited by the Borana community, where they think there is peace. Mr. Speaker, my question then begs, the UNHCR is ready and willing to fund the return. The refugees have indicated where they want to go. Where is the problem? Why is the government dragging its feet? And Mr. Speaker, it is very suspicious because the Cabinet Secretary knows that the government made an announcement that they are opening up the borders to allow Somalians from Somali to come into Mandera. So if you are looking for people outside Kenya to come into Kenya, why don't you make it easy for Kenyans outside Kenya to come back home? Finally, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I know you are about to shoot me. I just wanted to say, if you have the figures, please give us the kind of support you have given compensation to the families of these honorable members, 6 of them who died. I forgot to mention the Titus Ngoyoni. They were our colleagues in this house, and I was with them.
Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Speaker, yangu ni kumpongeza Prime Cabinet Secretary na pia serikali kwa kuwezesha kuachiliwa huru kwa Steve kule Saudi Arabia. Wiki iliyokwisha kulikuwa na habari kwamba Steve ambaye alikuwa amehukumiwa kifo na serikali ya Saudi Arabia alipata mfadhili kupitia kwa shirika la Kiislamu, wakamlipia ile ridhaa ya milioni 124. Na ningependa kuipongeza serikali kwa kushughulikia mambo yake na vile vile pia kusimama na familia ya Steve na hakika atakaporudi nchini Kenya, nafikiri itakuwa ni fursa nzuri kupewa makaribisho, kwa sababu alikuwa ni mtu ambaye amedhulumiwa katika kesi yake, na vile vile pia alikuwa amehukumiwa kifo kwa makosa ambayo yalikuwa sio makosa yake, kwa sababu hakuua kwa kukusudia, lakini aliua kwa kujitetea, kwa sababu mtu alikuwa amempiga na yeye alipojitetea yule mtu akaumia, baadaye akafariki. Lakini Mheshimiwa Speaker, la kufurahisha ni kwa alipokuwa gerezani kule Saudi Arabia.
Senator Faki, what is your question, please?
Naja kwa swali langu Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Go straight there.
Swali langu ni kuna wengi kama Steve ambao wako Saudi Arabia ambao wameshindwa kurudi nyumbani. Wengine wana watoto, wale watoto kwa vile Saudi Arabia hairuhusu zinaa, wale watoto ambao wamepatikana Mheshimiwa Speaker hawana uraia, kwa sababu wako kule, wa Kenya hawajui hapa, na vile vile pia hapa hawajapata vyeti vya kuzaliwa wala vyeti vya usafiri. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Speaker, nataka kujua ni jambo gani ambalo waziri anafanya ili kuhakikisha kwamba wale wa Kenya ambao wana watoto kule, wana familia kule, wanaweza kupewa vyeti vya kusafiri na vile vile pia vyeti vyao vya kuwawezesha kurudi nchini kwa salama. Asante Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Senator Faki, that does not meet the threshold of a supplementary question. However, we are discussing refugee issues here in a context of the Marsabit, Ethiopia situation. That does not certainly meet the requirements of a supplementary question. However, Prime Cabinet Secretary, if you're in a position, you may proceed to shed light on that matter. If you're not obliged to do so today. Senator Veronica.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Prime Cabinet Secretary, the bedrock of protection of refugees is based on the principle of international responsibility. We have seen the Shirika policy program that has been undertaken by the government, and specifically your ministry. I want you to confirm to this House whether that Shirikaplan is being funded nationally or internationally, and whether there has now been an exchange of humanitarian assistance that should ideally be going to the biggest camps in the world, Kakuma and Dadaab. Whether we have exchanged that with grants for development, as a result of which Kenya will be forced to pay for that Shirikaplan, as opposed to the international community taking up humanitarian assistance for refugees, whom Kenya has been kind enough to host for a very long time in the largest camps in Kakuma and Dadaab, and whether those Kenyans who came from Marsabit and who are now in Ethiopia are going to benefit from the Shirikaplan to come back to the country.
Senator Beatrice Kenya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My question to the Cabinet Secretary is, what is the state of basic services that the Kenya refugees in Magatho and Dilo towns in Ethiopia have access to? And now that you are planning for their coming back to Kenya, what are the reintegration plans that we have as per our national standards, particularly on the education and health and other basic amenities?
Senator Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to my neighbor. Mr. Speaker, mine is straightforward. Under Shirikaplan, how many Kenyans have refugee status across Ethiopia and across other nationalities? And Mr. Speaker, under Shirikaplan, how much resources does the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Foreign Affairs needs to bring back Kenyans who are willing and others? It should give us the estimate so that we don't just use a sweeping statement that we need only to lobby for more resources. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mgatana.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the floor. Mr. Speaker, on 12th of July 2005, the Turbi massacre took place, and this is the basis upon which these refugees ran away to Ethiopia. Mr. Speaker, it was a very sad moment for this country. 56 people are reported to have died. This country has a responsibility for the safety and the life of every Kenyan. What I want to hear from the minister is, have you compensated the 56 people who were killed because of the clash between the Gabra and the Borana? And what programs have you put since then to at least put back the people to where they were? Mr. Speaker, there has been a very serious how do I call it, ignoring and disregard of the northern lands in this country. And even the lives of the people who live there, they don't count. Mr. Speaker, if that had happened here in Nairobi, or it had happened here in these counties around, there would have been a different reaction. But Mr. Speaker, now we are talking almost 20 years later, no program, no compensation. Can the minister tell us exactly what programs the government is putting in to help our Kenyans, and how much money has been set aside to compensate these families? I submit, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Cabinet Secretary, you may now proceed to respond to those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I'll just talk to the issue of Shirikaplan. And I want to state that there's still a lot of conversation that is taking place between the government, the UNHCR, and the host communities where the refugees are placed. And specifically, if I talk to Kakuma and Dadaab, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans perhaps may need to be reminded in certain circles, not here, but out there, that we have had refugees who have stayed in these camps for as many as 35 to 36 years. Some have been born there. Some have no idea of where their parents migrated from and whether they know where they would be going if they went back. In both camps, this is a challenge that we still face. The second aspect is that the honorable members, I think it should be on record, that even as we speak, the situation in South Sudan is getting worse. And we are beginning to see again another inflow at the rate of about 20 refugees per day. So we are beginning to see certain circumstances that are giving us challenges. We also still remain with challenges of the Al-Shabaab and the conflict around the Somali side. And we also have sporadic conflicts along the Marsabit-Ethiopia border from time to time. So there is a serious security issue that has to be looked at regionally, but also internally by Kenya's security forces. The issue of the Shirikaplan, when we say we are talking and it was launched formally, we are engaging so that as the process of looking at the policy moves on, we can also maximize what is going to be the benefit to the people of Kenya. Because we do not want, as somebody said in the differentiated, somebody mentioned the differentiated assistance. It is true that there was a means testing within some of these camps, and they would look at the status in terms of well-being or economic being of some of these refugees, and therefore that would determine the level of rations that certain families would get as opposed to others. Now, these are issues that, if not managed well, can also create a lot of tension in the refugee camps. And this may be part of the reason that there could have been some challenges recently in Kakuma, amongst others. So I just want to state that we do not want, as a government, to enter into any program that is fully funded by the government. We can only handle our position in the context of international obligations. And if the refugees are going to be here, then the institutions like the UNHCR, WFP, and others who support this program will also be talked to and urged to be more productive so that Kenya's resources are not fully deployed for that. Secondly, we do not want to have a situation where communities reach a stage where they feel that those who are refugees are living a better life than the Kenyans themselves. So these are very delicate conversations that keep going on between us, UNHCR, and the host communities where the refugees are. And it would be wrong if I made all this statement without really appreciating the generosity and the humanitarian nature of the communities that have hosted these refugee camps for as long as I have said, 35, 36 years. It is not an easy undertaking. It brings a lot of pressure on the resources in those areas. The other thing, when we talk of integration of the refugees, it has to be done carefully, because we also want to transit from a situation where refugees are just drawing from Kenyan resources. They must also be put to a situation where they contribute to growing the wealth of this country and not just taking from the people of Kenya. So the whole Shirikaplan is premised on these basic principles and a few others. The other thing that I would want to touch on is that the Honorable Boni Khalwale raised issues about the insecurity, protracted insecurity in these regions, and also recounting the loss of many honorable Kenyans because of this conflict. And also Mungatana has raised the issue of compensation. I want to be very candid on something here, not to belittle the challenges we are facing, but the truth of the matter is that we are still having insecurity in certain regions, either because of pasture, because of ethnicity, because of the scramble for resources in those areas. We've given an example of Marsabit. You will also recall that even not too long ago, Kenya lost General Ogola in the Baringo side, again on a mission dealing with aspects of conflicts internally. So we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that we can change cultural practices. We can provide meaningful alternatives for people to earn a proper living that does not cause the loss of lives. And I would want to point out that, for instance, in Marsabit, and going into Marsabit, the government is doing quite a bit to try and open up the areas. The road network that we all know, that is really moving, and it's going to eventually go beyond and link up to Garissa. And the road network, the investment that is going in that place, jointly by the government of Kenya and the World Bank, is massive. And all this is to help in facilitating so that there are more economic opportunities. So it is not that the government of Kenya is going to neglect or wishes to neglect anybody. It's a question of just us having more resources and deploying them progressively into these areas. I wish to state that Honorable Mthama, I agree with the Speaker that is a completely different angle, because internally displaced Kenyans for other reasons are tackled separately, not in the context of the refugee program. So that would have to be taken up as a completely separate question. When we talk of resources, I hope I've also addressed partly the issues raised by Beatrice, Senator Beatrice, in terms of the state. She was talking of the state of basic resources in Ethiopia, not here. In Ethiopia, I cannot say that they are very elaborate, because the situation of refugees is that even the government, the host government that is there, can only do so much within the context of their budgetary resources. So we cannot vouch fully for what the government of Ethiopia can do or not do within the refugee camps. However, what is critical is for us to accelerate the relocation of the Kenyan refugees from Ethiopia. And the message I'm taking from here is that resources need to be set aside urgently to be able to undertake this challenge.